Fourth quarter estimates also still going higher, reflecting the fact that analysts have been too conservative. I think you'd have to have a really strong slowdown to dismantle the progress that we're seeing in the earnings stream. I'm not saying it can't happen, but right. I do think we want to respect what's happened so far this year and the likelihood for it to continue to happen going forward.
So, Gina, what's the factor that could create that slowdown? Is it COVID specifically? Is it a misstep in Fed policy? Trying to figure out what could be that catalyst.
Well, I think you've got a few different catalysts that could create a slower growth environment. The first is, and I think we're seeing this resolve itself now, if oil prices had continued to accelerate at the pace that they had, it could have become a pretty significant risk to consumer spending. $80 was clearly not a particular risk, at 4% of overall consumption. That's not a big impediment. But if you get closer to 5% of consumption, 6% of consumption, had we been pushing $90 to $100 on oil, it could have created some very real impacts on consumer spending into the holiday season. Luckily, that's moving in the opposite direction for now, but I think we want to be on guard for oil, natural gas, commodity prices at large to potentially disrupt the path of spending if they remain high. I'd say the other thing would be, any bigger fear of slowdown that results in a renewed employment crunch. Like, let's say we go into January and retailers no longer need the extra staff and the like, then you can see some really significant impacts.
And that will put the Fed in predicament when I think about their dual mandate. All right, guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Of course, Gina Martin-Adams, she's our chief equity strategist. Dave Wilson's going to be back with his chart of the day and stock of the day.
Let's do the Bloomberg Businessweek bite of the day. It's one number that tells us a lot. It's brought to you by GEP. GEP helps businesses transform supply chains with strategy, managed services, and AI-based cloud-native software. Learn more at GEP.com.
Well, today's number is 600,000. Ford expects to be the second largest maker of EVs within the next 2 years. That coming from CEO Jim Farley. He put that out on Twitter. It now expects to produce 600,000 EVs annually by the end of 2023 before Blue Oval City and other EV sites begin operations. The battle is on.
All right, context here, 100,000 cars to Tesla from Hertz. That's equivalent to about 1/10, 1/11 of what Tesla does in a year. So still a far cry from Tesla, but second biggest, nothing to shake a stick at.
And everybody's kind of moving up their game, that's for sure.
All right, let's head to Washington, D.C. for a check of the latest world and national news. Nancy Lyons is standing by in D.C. Hey, Nance.
Thanks, Tim. Kyle Rittenhouse has been found not guilty on all counts in connection with the deaths of 2 protesters and the injury of a third during a Black Lives Matter protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin. The 18-year-old Rittenhouse collapsed in tears after hearing the verdict. Bloomberg's legal correspondent June Grasso says jury confusion could have played a part, as well as the state's laws.
It was an uphill battle for the prosecution because of the self-defense laws in Wisconsin and because of the video that showed a lot and confirmed a lot of what Rittenhouse said on the stand.
Bloomberg's June Grasso says it is still possible Rittenhouse could face federal and/or state civil rights charges. It's taken months to get here, but House Democrats have finally signed off on the president's Build Back Better plan. Bloomberg's Amy Morris has more from Washington.
It has been a big week for the Biden administration. The House approved the tax and spend legislation by a near party line vote with far-reaching changes in health care, energy, climate change, family services, and more. This just days after President Biden signed a $1 trillion package of highway and other infrastructure projects. The Build Back Better bill now heads to the Senate, where it faces an uncertain future. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Pfizer and Moderna now have FDA authorization for their coronavirus booster shots for all adults. The CDC is mulling over whether to give its approval today. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
Thank you so much for that update, Nancy Lyons. Tim Stanovic and Carol Masser. And Carol, we are in a special place today. We're not in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio in New York. We're not that far.
No.
45 minutes, depending on traffic.
From Bloomberg headquarters.
From Bloomberg headquarters, yeah. We're at the UBS Arena in Elmont, New York.
Right, and they're just getting ready to really open up for the first time when it comes to playing a home game for the Islanders.
Yeah, it's going to be
it's pretty cool.
It's a little cold in here.
Yeah, yeah.
it is an ice rink, right?
It's a little chilly.
It is a little chilly.
I actually was just walking the rink, and it's pretty cold.
Okay.
It's pretty cold. They're setting up for some stuff. Speaking of first times, though, President Joe Biden briefly transferred power to to Vice President Kamala Harris today while he was under anesthesia for a colonoscopy, marking the first time a woman officially served as acting commander-in-chief.
Yeah, Harris was given the title of, quote, acting president for an hour and 25 minutes under Section 3 of the 25th Amendment to the Constitution. It was ratified in 1967. The clause has actually only been formally invoked twice before, when then President George W. Bush had colonoscopies.
Colonoscopies, I guess there's a connection.
So I guess when Obama didn't have colonoscopies, or he didn't go under anesthesia for them, maybe?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I'll have to look it up.
Another woman once took on the role of an acting president, Woodrow Wilson's wife, Edith. You might remember. Check out your history books.
I don't remember that.
Functionally ran the executive branch after her husband suffered a stroke. That was back in 1919.
Yeah, power never really formally transferred to her. Biden underwent the procedure Friday morning, a day before his 79th birthday. Jen Psaki tweeted that the president spoke with Harris at 11:35 a.m. and then resumed powers at the time, so a couple hours ago.
Yeah, Biden was the oldest person ever elected to the office at the age of 77 in 2020, leading to even more scrutiny of his health. His last medical assessment released by his presidential campaign, that was in December of 2019, described him as, quote, a healthy, vigorous 77-year-old male who is fit to successfully execute the duties of the presidency, to include them as chief executive, head of state, and commander-in-chief. I mean, that's why we're talking probably more about this, because of his age.
Yeah, exactly. And expect
and
more of this to come
anesthesia.
ahead of the midterms, too.
Exactly. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters. I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got the Dow lower, S&P, NASDAQ, both higher at records. S&P little changed, up 1 point right now, but at a record 47.05. NASDAQ up 81, also a record there, up 0.5%. The Dow down 226, lower by 0.6%. 10-year yield 1.53%. Bitcoin's up 0.7% at 57,978. Gold is down 0.5%, 1848, and crude continues to slump. 76.04 for a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude right now. WTI lower today by 3.7%. Natural gas, though, interestingly higher, up 2.6%, 503 per million BTUs. Stocks have been fluctuating after hawkish remarks from Federal Reserve officials and mounting concern that another wave of the pandemic in Europe could spur more lockdowns. Walt Disney is adding Disney Plus and ESPN Plus to its Hulu Plus live TV product and raising the price by $5 a month, giving the flagship Disney Plus streaming service millions more customers at a time when growth is slowing. Shares of the Walt Disney Company down now by 1.4%. Recapping stocks mixed, S&P at a record, up by less than 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master along with Tim Stanovic. We're live at the UBS Arena in Elmont, New York. Now, the new issue of Bloomberg Business Week, Tim, right? It is all about inflation. It is back in a big way. And what's really wonderful is the issue deals with several stories and different aspects as we look at the inflation debate that's underway.
I have to tell you, truly, one of my favorite stories in this piece was by Jim Ellis, Assistant Managing Editor for Bloomberg Business Week. He joins us on the phone from New Jersey. Jim, this wasn't just one of my favorite pieces because we got to see a picture of you with your kids from the early 1980s in this. But I have to tell you, I'm a millennial. I was born in the mid-1980s. I've heard my parents talk about mortgage rates in the 12, 14, and 16%, but that is not something that we live with right now. So take us back to this period of time in your life and what you remember from then, and also the lessons that you have for policymakers right now who maybe need to pay more attention to the way consumers are feeling about the economy.
Well, what made this story such an interesting one for us was because there seems to be an intergenerational shift here, and the people who are used to, rates that are 3% or 4% are sort of forgetting what inflation can do to rates and why so many older Americans are afraid of inflation. So when we talked about how to do this, we said, well, hey, you're old. Take us back. And so I said, sure. It all went back to when I moved from Chicago at the around 1981. I left a mortgage there that was probably in the high sevens, and I moved to Atlanta. And there, because we had just gone through the oil crisis, where oil prices had tripled in the U.S., and that it set in motion, a wage price spiral that sent interest rates soaring. I moved there, and I was offered a whopping 14.5% mortgage, which luckily my employer bought down to 12.5%. I took out a 12.5% mortgage on a 3-bedroom house, and it scared the hell out of me because all of a sudden I had seen, basically my mortgage rate had almost doubled, compared to my previous house in just 4 years. And things seemed out of control. Prices were crazy. Gas lines were still, they had waned by then, but they were still a fear. And so what that taught me was that my lifestyle had to change. All of a sudden, we weren't going out. We were entertaining at home. Church was our recreation. We were doing things very differently than we had done. And it changed a lot of people's lives, and it also changed the way that Americans looked at their politicians. And it killed Jimmy Carter's presidency. And when I see what's going on now, it made me think that politicians are going to have to really worry about these sort of small drips of new costs, lest voters take it out on them.
Well, Jim, there's a line in your story. You said, I worried about inflation's impact then, and I'm worried about it now. The similarities have been small, but they're growing. Does it feel like a runaway inflation scenario like we kind of saw back then?
No, I mean, it doesn't feel like a runaway inflation scenario, but, I mean, the thing is, at the beginning back then, it didn't seem like it was going to turn into runaway inflation either. And so that's the danger for politicians. The other danger is that while lots of economists now are saying, oh, it's nothing like the 70s, or it's not that bad because, stock markets have done very well, we're going back to work, but they're forgetting that while that works on sort of macroeconomic level, the kitchen table economics that actually sort of determines who gets elected and who the voters go for, the kitchen table economics aren't that great. People are seeing their gas prices going up. They've seen food prices rise a lot. They've also seen a lot of prices that had been held down during the pandemic sort of snapping back to normal pricing. And so it makes people think, wow, a lot of stuff is up. And right now, when you look at the latest Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey, average Americans are saying they expect prices to rise another 5% next year. And it's that sort of inflation sort of psychology that sets in that makes people think, regardless of what's out there, that it's bad.
So, Jim, not to give the president or Biden any advice here, but what should Democrats who are in office do right now if they want to hold on to the House in 2022 and Biden wants to hold on to the presidency in 2024? And we just have about 40 seconds.
Oh, there's not a lot they can do simply because a lot of the sort of financial levers that they can control take a long time to put in. But they can, however, start being much more vocal in their messaging about what's wrong with, sort of for average Americans. They can share that pain and they can sort of get away from this insensitive thing. The idea that you're insensitive and that you don't feel people's pain and you can't do anything about it is what killed Jimmy Carter's presidency. They should think about that and take heed.
Right. A sensitivity to what's going on Main Street, that's for sure. Jim Ellis, thank you so much. He is Assistant Managing Editor at Bloomberg Businessweek. He's joining us on the phone from New Jersey. It is, I would call it a little bit of an inflation takeover of the magazine this week.
It is. The cover is all about inflation, and this is among the many stories about it. You can check out this story in the new issue of Bloomberg Businessweek magazine, available on newsstands and now and at Bloomberg.com/Businessweek.
You are listening to Bloomberg Businessweek. We're live at the UBS Arena.
broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to
So,
the
Tim, we still have a few minutes. We're going to do a tease to our news guy.
and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Yes, indeed. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Tim Stenovic. We are live at the UBS Arena. We've got a great guest coming up.
We do. Oakview Group CEO Tim Leiweke is going to be joining us in just a minute. We're going to talk all about this brand new arena, the UBS Arena, where we are right now.
He made this all responsible. He's going to tell us what that sound is, too.
Yeah, it's only only $1 billion.
Only $1 billion, but quite a project, and we've been walking around.
What is that?
I don't know.
All right, we're going to have to find out in a minute. In the meantime, let's get a check of the trading day. Here's Charlie Pellet.
Keep that sound up. I love it. Sounds like a wave pool or something. Here's what's going on. We have got the Dow, the S&P. They are both lower right now. S&P been fluctuating. We've got NASDAQ at a record up 82, up by 0.5%. Tech shares pushing higher, beating companies that stand to benefit the most from an economic reopening. Right now, the S&P is down a point, little change. The Dow down 260, tumbling by 0.7%. NASDAQ up 80, higher by just about 0.5%. 10-year now up 15.30 seconds. 10-year yield 1.53%. NASDAQ 100 index also at a record up 0.6%, but the Russell 2000 moving lower by 0.5%. Bitcoin up 0.4 right now, 57,836 on Bitcoin. As I mentioned, gold lower by 0.6, 18.47 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude 76.10 a barrel right now. Crude dropping another 3.7%. Austria will enter a nationwide lockdown from Monday as a record spike in coronavirus cases threatens to overwhelm the country's healthcare system. A reaction from Dr. Andrew Pekosh, who is a professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health.
Yeah, it's very difficult to really understand all of this because we've got cases in Germany, in Austria, that are higher than at any time in this pandemic, higher than before we had vaccines, before we had antivirals, before we even knew much about how this virus was transmitting. And the second thing is, remember, anything that you implement now to reduce case numbers won't be seen for another 7 to 10 days at least in terms of its effectiveness.
Dr. Pekosh with the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, which is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Checking some of the vaccine stocks, Pfizer down now by 0.5%. Its German partner BioNTech, its ADRs up 4.7%. AstraZeneca's ADRs a little changed, up less than 0.1%. Moderna rallying now by 6%. J&J Johnson & Johnson up by 0.2%. Miami's City Commission has voted to remove electric scooters from the streets, dealing a blow to the industry as South Florida heads into its traditionally bustling winter season for visitors. Bird Global, one of the largest scooter rental companies, falling now by 1.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. We are live at the UBS Arena in Elmont, New York, and we've got two great guests with us right now. I want to bring them in. Majority owner of the New York Islanders. We're talking about John Ledecky. Also with us is the CEO and co-founder of Oakview Group, Tim Leiweke.
That's good, Carol.
You're correcting it.
Yeah, I told you. It took me 12 years to do it myself.
I'm working on it. You guys, together created this incredible arena. First of all, I want to ask you, John, let me kick it off with you. It's been a while since you've had a home place to play.
Well, the fans have been on quite a journey.
They have.
And as Tim has said, and my partner Scott Malkin, the co-owner of the New York Islanders, has said, the fans deserve a new home. The milk carton sell-by date on the Nassau Coliseum was probably 1993, so it's been a long journey.
Your picture wasn't on the side of that card.
No, little Timmy's missing. But it really is quite a momentous occasion for our fans. They're the best fans in the National Hockey League, and they deserve a new venue, and they're getting state-of-the-art, beyond state-of-the-art, because of Tim and Oakview Group and Sterling Project Development, led by Jeff Wilpon. What they've done here is magnificent. Thank you, Tim.
Outhouse to the penthouse, John.
There we go.
Outhouse to the penthouse.
To that point, Tim, what is special about this arena?
So, one, it's New York. And so when we started our company, we were fortunate enough to partner with John and Scott on building this. But for us to be a world-class company, you have to be in New York. New York's a very competitive marketplace. It has the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. So you got to go compete. And you're competing in the biggest city in the world. You're competing in a city that ultimately has these wonderful venues that are already doing quite well. So we had to go carve out our niche. We had to go find an identity and a culture for UBS Arena that made us unique. And we very, very fortunate that right off the bat, we get Harry Styles and we break all records with Ticketmaster for pre-registration. So clearly it's going to work for the Islander fans. They've had 30 years worth of the desert before they finally found this. And now we're going to work for music. And we're going to be in great shape with music because I think what people forget, 7 million people live closer to this arena than any other arena in the metro area.
Right.
Yeah. It's a big island.
And we have sand, but it's in a beach right now.
By the way, you know what that is?
What is that?
So as you know, I built the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, and that's the home of the Kraken. So I brought him out here with me for opening weekend, and he's hungry.
We don't see him anywhere. We just hear
he's
him.
back there. You don't want to see him. If you see him, run.
Well, when you guys were putting this together, what were the conversations, John? Like, what did you want to have as a home place for your team?
On budget and on time was the most important thing for Sterling.
50-50.
Did Tim do it?
50-50 on that one.
And Tim is really a visionary, right? Tim has built more arenas and ran more arenas than any human being alive today. It's not a question of longevity. He's just built great businesses. Oakview Group was started the next week. We met Tim in a hotel room in Montreal, and he gave us the vision of what an arena should look like. And now I think he's got 25 or 28 in development. But his vision, combined with Scott's real estate background, created this fantastic place.
Well, Tim, we do think about, like, the pandemic and stuff. Like, did that impact your thinking about how, because there's a lot of touchless, right, ease, and people just going in and doing their thing?
So two things. One, can you imagine spending $1 billion privately on an endeavor like this, and then all of a sudden
it is privately funded.
It is privately funded. That taxpayers' money ought to be used for education, safety, and transportation.
Governor Tim.
So we did this the right way. But in the middle of that commitment, suddenly, you know, I used to tell people they don't teach this in school, so you got to go and figure this out on the fly. I think we made changes to the design of the building because of the COVID. So you'll see in the building we have a 360-degree air circulation system.
Nice.
We have MERV 13 filterization system. That's what you see in hospitals. We trap the bad guys. So we have 80% more airflow coming in and out of this building. Now, I'm not cussing here. It's really the name of the company. We have 4 fans called Big Ass Fans in the roof.
We had the founder on the show.
You did?
Yeah.
See, everyone always looks at me going, there's no way that company's called Big Ass Fans. I said, I swear to God, he trademarked it. It had to be an interesting process with the government.
We're so glad you're saying it and not us.
But you know what's so great for us is that that's now in as original equipment.
That's great.
Every other arena in the country to deal with COVID and COVID-related situations has to retrofit. So, again, thanks to Tim's vision, we spent the extra money up front to make sure we had the best air filtration systems in the world.
Well, there's something about when you can build from the ground up.
Exactly.
We're going to come back with the two of you, Tim Leiweke, John Ledecky. We're going to continue our conversation here live at the UBS Arena. In the meantime, back to World and National News and a check-in with Nancy Lyons in D.C. Take it away, Nance.
Thanks, Carol. A jury in Kenosha, Wisconsin has found Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty on all counts following last year's deadly shooting at a protest. Rittenhouse was 17 when he traveled across state lines with a militia group and shot 3 people with an assault rifle, killing 2. He says he fired in self-defense, and jurors apparently agreed.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
The family of Anthony Huber, one of the men killed by Rittenhouse, says they are heartbroken and angry about the acquittal. President Biden says our jury system works and we must abide by it. Democratic leaders are cheering House passage of the social spending bill. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi spoke on the floor ahead of today's vote.
With the passage of the Build Back Better Act, we, this Democratic Congress, are taking our place in the long and honorable heritage of our democracy, with legislation that will be the pillar of health and financial security in America.
Pelosi calls the bill transformative. The nearly $2 trillion measure expands the social safety net while combating climate change. It's one of President Biden's top legislative priorities, but faces an uncertain fate in the tightly divided Senate. Vice President Kamala Harris made history today as President Biden underwent a medical procedure. She became the first woman in American history to hold the powers of the presidency, if only for just a short time. Biden had a colonoscopy as part of his annual physical and transferred presidential powers over to Harris briefly while he was under anesthesia. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons. This is Bloomberg.
All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Businessweek. Carol Massar along with Tim Stanovic, and we are here with John Ledecky and Tim Leiweke. Of course, we're talking about the majority owner of the New York Islanders, and of course, Tim, who is the CEO of Oakview Group. We're talking about the UBS Arena. Tim, what's your favorite part of the arena?
These acoustical panels you use. So see the wood right there? Go look at it real tight. And when you get up close, you'll see they have holes in it. So we trap the bass and the reverb from bands. And so it makes the building acoustically perfect. So when you come here for a concert, it's going to be spectacular.
Because that's an issue with some places, some large venues where you go see a concert.
Not good.
Yeah, they fit a lot of people, but it doesn't sound good.
No, and so when you think about the amount of money people are spending on that night out, it's unfortunate if they sit there and hear the concert twice. So what you want is you want a perfect bowl. So my partner in our company is Irving Azoff. He's the largest manager in the music business. So when you have Don Henley as your engineering critique on your acoustics, you better make sure your acoustics are perfect because Don's pretty demanding.
But Tim, that's what you really did that no other arena had ever done before. He went to all the rock acts. He went to all the rock managers. He went to the musicians and said, what do you want in a building? And they all said, geez, no one's ever asked us.
Well, they asked for free rent first, and we said no.
But the bottom line is you got input that very few people have gotten from arenas, and that's why the acoustics are so great here.
So interestingly enough, this building has a loading dock that's the largest on the East Coast. We could do 16 semi-trucks at the same time. So if you think about it, at the Garden, you got to pull up a ramp, and it's one truck at a time. At Barclays, you go into an elevator, and the turntable turns the truck around. Here, we do 16 trucks at one time, 8 that could be unloading. So between the acoustics, the largest lower bowl, we have a locker room facility that is only for music artists. So that's the first one of those that's ever been built on the East Coast. So when an artist comes in here, they get in and produce quicker, cheaper. They got their own compound. The compound's beautiful, and the acoustics hopefully will be great.
Hang on a sec. Tim, John, we're going to come back in just a moment. Hold that thought. I know you got one there, John. You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek. Carol Massar, Tim Stanovic. We're coming back in just a moment with them. This is Bloomberg.
updates, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters. I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got the Dow, the S&P, both on the minus side. Laurel little change right now on the S&P, down by 1 point. NASDAQ advancing to a record, up another 82 points right now, up 0.5%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average tumbling 266 points, down 0.7%. 10 years up 15.30. 10-year yield 1.53%. Gold is down 0.6 right now, $18.48 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate Crude, $76.10 a barrel. WTI down 3.7%. Right now, Applied Materials shares tumbling after last night's earnings report. Shares of Applied, they are down by 4.8%. Bitcoin briefly up 0.6%, 57,930 on Bitcoin. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Let's get back to, we've got John Ledecky, of course, with us, and Tim Liwecki. I keep doing that.
No, I just realized your partner's name is more difficult than mine. I'm glad to meet another Tim who has a harder name.
You know, it's not just two Tims here. There's a third Tim over there,
There's a
Tim
Tim,
Harrow,
okay,
who's
this is
working
great.
the boards. This is the land of
What's
Tims.
his last name?
Harrow.
Harrow.
Oh, that's easy. Come
Yeah.
on, man. Come to the dark side. Go
Tim
get one of these
Liwecki,
names.
John Ledecky. As I said, it would be a great law firm, Ledecky and Liwecki. So let me ask
It's Friday.
you. It is so Friday. So, John, what can we expect from the team this year? You guys are doing well. The fans seem happy.
Well, we had a great run last year. We had a run to the Final Four 2 years in a row. And every year presents new challenges. 13 games to open the season on the road.
Right.
The objective was try to be around 500. The team came through with that. And now we get the home cooking going. So 4 games in a row at home against great competition. And the place will be rocking tomorrow. You know, you guys are business guys. Amazing to see tickets for an Islanders game going for $1,200, $1,500 for opening night. And I think we're so sold out. The fans, who this building really represents, they sold the building out. They came and took all those tickets for the entire season. So we're sold out.
John, talk a little bit about the fan experience here and really how you guys thought about that when it came to designing the home for the Islanders.
Yeah, it really is all about the fans. It's all about inclusion. It's about being able to go to the Heineken bar and you don't need a hall pass to do it. You want to play with a Kraken, you can play with a Kraken. If you're hearing that noise, it's not an earthquake, ladies and gentlemen.
He has awoken.
And at the same time, for those who want to do business, celebrate a special occasion, we have everything from special clubs to a speakeasy that'll be opening later in the season. So
you do feel like when you're here, it's an experience. It's about gatherings. You can see how people could just gather in different tables.
It's a Disneyland for adults.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It really does feel that way.
Yeah.
Very different from other arenas.
Totally. So we have 2 patios here. So one of them's the Heineken bar. So it looks out at the racetrack and the paddocks across the way at Belmont Park. And if you think about it, the others can't do it because they were designed around railroad stations and train tracks. That's the brilliance here is we had 440 acres to build a campus out, and we weren't restricted and didn't have to compromise on the fan experience because we got to design the building perfectly because we weren't trying to squeeze everything in.
How did you know what the fans wanted at this point?
Well, I went and talked to 400 fans a night.
Did you?
At every home game.
Well, you play with them.
I don't
meet with them,
but I
play
don't
the
sit in the owner's box. Okay,
I
I have nothing against owners sitting in the owner's box, but if you're building a new building, you have got to hear what the fan who's having the experience wants. And Islander fans have a great reputation for speaking their minds. You know how Long Island is, right? Everybody's got an opinion. So I got hundreds of opinions each night, wrote them down, and then we went to all 30 NHL arenas trying to borrow the best of breed. And then we have the maestro here, Tim Liwecki, who put it all together in a mixer, and out comes this great arena.
So give me an example of something that you learned from one of those conversations that we see here today.
You know what? 25 minutes at the Nassau Coliseum to use the bathroom. Unacceptable. More bathrooms than any arena in North America. I think any building maybe in North America.
I noticed as I walked around, there's like bathrooms everywhere.
Well, and more women's bathrooms than any arena in the world.
Oh, and they're beautiful.
Thank you.
The bathrooms, by the way, the women's bathrooms here are the most beautiful bathrooms in the arena business now. Let's see what happens after Metallica and see if we can still preserve them. But we're hopeful. We're hopeful.
And then of course 20 minutes, 25 minutes for a cold, disgusting hot dog. And now we have everything from grab and go, which is great because the fans want to get their food and go back, to more haute cuisine. But the most important thing is every bar can see the ice. or the concert, right? So important, because how many times have I missed a goal trying to get a beer for a buddy when I was a fan? It's so irritating. So now you can actually turn around, see the play. You also have it on TV screens everywhere. More TV screens, I think, than any arena as well.
Maybe we could also find someone to get you a beer at one of these games. You might not have to get your own beers these days.
Well, hopefully the fans are happy. But I'll tell you.
I'll buy you a Heineken.
I'll tell you what Tim says, which is, John, it doesn't matter. You could have the Taj Mahal. Someone is going to find something, and we just have to get through the first few weeks.
Now, did I hear that you guys are going to be carbon neutral by 2024 too?
We are. So I feel very, very strongly. We're carbon neutral at Climate Pledge Arena, and a lot of the credit goes to Jeff Bezos and Amazon. He really helped us figure that out. We are actually now in the middle of creating a new company called Goal, and Goal is going to go help every building figure out how they could be more sustainable. And then we're going to come along and every year grade them and give them a certification process. This industry, we're not going to go solve the problem of global warming, but we can inspire. And that's what music and sports have always done. There is no more important issue than that one. And if we on the East Coast could figure out a way to build an arena in New York and go carbon neutral, that's going to have a huge impact on fixing this.
That's crucial, because I think West Coast is easy. People are kind of in
hard
that mode.
On the East Coast.
It's hard on the East Coast.
People don't understand that. It's almost impossible to be carbon neutral on the East Coast.
Right. Why is it going to take 2 years from now to do that, though? Why couldn't you do that from the ground up?
So actually, I was just talking to the governor about this. So we have to know where our energy comes from. So the electricity we bring into the building has to be metered so that it's renewable energy, solar or wind in particular. And unless the power company could ultimately tell us where that's coming from, then we may be getting bad electricity, coal, for example. So what we're working now with the state on is how we ultimately can qualify and quantify sustainable energy and power that we bring in here. You got to get rid of your gas. So we have gas in this building. We have no gas in the building at Climate Pledge Arena. We got to figure out a way to go use that. You got to recycle your food every night and get it back to the food bank so that you got to go buy 80% of everything you're going to see in this arena that we serve is made in the region, because then we limit transportation. And then eventually for the people the people that are driving here, we're going to have to get carbon credits ultimately to deal with the emissions of all of the cars that park here. We'll have more power charging stations here.
1,000, did I see?
Yeah, it's actually quite remarkable that we're going to have. You could take the fleets of electric vehicles at LaGuardia and JFK overnight. They'll come here and they'll charge up overnight.
Wow. Working with a company called XL Fleet.
Right.
Symbol XL. On NASDAQ, on New York Stock Exchange, on Bloomberg Radio. I always wanted to do that.
John is going to be our third anchor.
That's fine. Hey, you're welcome anytime, John.
You go on vacation, I'll come in, and vice versa, right? I'll work for whatever the minimum wage is.
I'm out next week, so we have an empty chair.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Absolutely. Tim, you did a deal with Spectrum. We just want to squeeze that in.
Yeah, we just closed a deal this morning with Spectra, so now we're in the food and beverage business, and we have over 300 new facilities that join the OVG family, so we're really proud of that partnership. We're really excited to grow, and now we're the second largest facility management company in the world.
And
which is
2015,
amazing.
He started out one guy, and now his company is worth literally billions and billions of dollars. It's unbelievable what he's accomplished in the last 6 years.
So what's the next thing you two do together?
Win.
Go have a beer.
Yeah, go have a Heineken. Let's go. It's right there. I've been staring at it the whole interview.
We'll check our stocks on our UBS app.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, that was 2 shameless plugs.
That's okay. You can do as many shameless plugs, and you can come back anytime. I wish you good luck.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Yes,
happy holidays.
Welcome to UBS Arena. We're really proud to have you here today. Thanks.
Come anytime.
And
We're going to give you the hall pass.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay.
Give you the hall pass. The UBS hall pass. You've got it. Thanks, guys.
Good luck with the season.
Cheers.
Good luck with the arena. We really appreciate it. Tim Lewicki and, of course, John Ledecky here at the UBS Arena in Elmont, New York, folks. Coming up next, we're going to continue to track the markets for you on this Friday. Do a little bit of talk about inflation and the Fed.
You ready for that Harry Styles show?
I am actually. I am so ready for Harry Styles. Am I too old for Harry?
No,
you're never
not
too old for Harry Styles. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pettit. We move into the final hour of trading on this Friday, November 19th. We have got the Dow, the S&P both lower. NASDAQ is advancing. Tech stocks rallying. NASDAQ up 81 right now at a record, up 0.5%. S&P 500 index, while it is lower today by 2 points, down less than 0.1%, little changed. It is on track for an advance this week of 0.4%. The Dow down 263 off session lows, down 0.7%. S&P's been fluctuating after hawkish remarks from Fed officials and mounting concern that another wave of the pandemic in Europe could spur more lockdowns. As for the market backdrop, Sarah Malik is Chief Investment Officer for Global Equities at Nuveen.
What you're seeing with a market that has been hitting new highs is that the undertones are quite defensive. We're seeing growth stocks outperform because investors are worried that the economic growth is going to get cut off not only by the Fed, but maybe by this fourth wave of COVID. But there is some good news here. We do have a COVID pill hopefully around the corner. And going into 2022, hopefully this pandemic becomes more of an endemic and we can somewhat kind of move forward with COVID cases becoming more manageable. And then we go back to worrying about the Fed and what are they going to do.
Tough day for a lot of the airline stocks. UAL, for example, trading lower now by 3.3%. American down now by 1.1%. Delta is tumbling 1.3%. Southwest Airlines higher by 0.8%. Among some of the other travel and tourism names, hotels, mixed bag right now. We have got Marriott down 0.4%. Hilton up 0.7. Hyatt Hotels, they're up by 0.1%. Cruise lines lower across the board. COVID concerns. We've got Carnival Corp down 2.8%. Royal Caribbean also down 2.8%. Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings also down 2.8%. S&P down 0.5 point, little changed. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovic on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed, everybody. We are live at UBS Arena in Elmont, New York. We're talking sports. We're watching the markets. And here on site with us is Tom Naratel. He's UBS co-president of Global Wealth Management. It's been quite a day. How are you?
Really super exciting day.
It is exciting.
I'm out of breath from all the activity.
Yeah, you're running around a lot. They got you like working a double today, I think.
That's right. But you've got to have fun doing this stuff. This is great.
It's hard not to walking around here. What does it mean for UBS? You guys have naming rights for the next 20 years. A really incredible, top-notch facility, entertainment, sports. So much is going to be going on. What does it mean for the firm to have it?
It's really big for us because first, New York's the financial, sports, and entertainment capital of the world. We've got 10,000 employees in the New York metropolitan area. We have over 500,000 clients. So if you're going to do a deal like this, there's no place you're going to do other than New York. It's just hard to find them.
Right.
So this was really just a unique opportunity to work with the Islanders and Oakview Group, and we couldn't be any happier about how it's turned out.
What's the analysis that goes into making it worth it? I mean, this is a significant investment. And I got to ask, what's the calculation that you do so you know that you're actually making an impact and making people think about UBS in a certain way?
So, there's a lot of marketing research that goes into it, taking a look at your brand familiarity and how's that ringing with your key segments. But the key on this one really is, how do you feel you're going to get the extensions of your brand in that? And that depends a lot on your partners. And I can tell you what I see and the way our partners have spoken about it from the very beginning. When they talk about UBS Arena, they're always adding in something about our value proposition to our clients. And so having the right kind of partners that know how to talk about your brand extension, that's a critical part of it. The financial calculations on it are, you can do the classic, what's the value of an impression? What's the value of that logo every single time a camera hits it when ESPN is showing the clips? And from that standpoint, you can get to a place where you can feel comfortable about it. But at the end of the day, for us, another big part of it was social media, which we think, as we talk to the Islanders, talk to OVG, it was a lot about how do you plan on using social media? Because that increasingly is something that's the way things are going to get reflected. And we've been happy even just in the short period of time that we've been working on the arena, we've gotten a huge amount of awareness just from the social media accounts. Now we're going to hit, a team comes out on the ice, maybe it's the LA Kings, and they're going to play here, but everybody in LA is going to know about UBS Arena, and that's hits another client base for us there as well.
You really got that from Tim Lewicki and John Ledecky, who we just talked to, who are just a fun duo to sit down with. But you do feel like that they talk to musicians in terms of the entertainment aspect of it, to the Islanders, like what they needed, and really talk to the fans about what they wanted in terms of an experience. And that whole idea of social media. I mean, this is what a younger fan base is interested in.
Absolutely, and I think the other thing about thinking them knowing the demographics of their fan base, and John is the fans owner for sure, right? In terms of
he
knowing
gets out in with the fans.
Absolutely, and so if you look, the experience here is unlike any other arena. The number of clubs like this where fans can just pop in, have a drink, meet, socialize. In between the periods, before the game, after the game, I think it's just a really unique experience compared to other arenas.
Agree.
Hey, we got to talk a little bit about markets, too.
Oh, yeah,
because,
you know something about that, right?
Yeah, well, I guess that's the other part of my job.
And it's certainly a big part of our program at Bloomberg Businessweek. What are you hearing right now from your high net worth clients? What's on their minds right now?
Yeah, so there are three big questions on the minds of clients today. It's first and foremost about inflation. It's hard for them to get away from it. It's the price of gas. It's hearing all the shocking headlines about how much is the Thanksgiving dinner going to cost you more this year.
Even high net worth.
Even so. Well, in other ways, they see it as, what do you mean when I'm going in and buying a new car? I'm not bargaining down on sticker price. In fact, the dealers tell me I'm paying above sticker for that.
Right.
So they're just seeing and feeling a lot of things. The news. Certainly, you all cover quite a lot about supply chain problems, and so that's bothering them. Second thing is about growth. The questions about, what is it as we start to see fiscal stimulus, coming down a bit, monetary stimulus coming down a little bit. What does that mean for growth overall? A lot of our clients are entrepreneurs, so for them it's, am I going to get enough growth in my business to outweigh the increased cost of labor? So a lot of concerns about growth. And then the third piece is, man, you can't have a conversation with a client without talking about the Fed.
So what? So tell me, what do they want to know?
What are they going to do, and what's the impact of that going to be? Because the Fed's really, positioned here as a significant component of saving the economy in the investor's mind. And so now it's, well, if they reverse that, what does that mean, and will we be able to navigate that? So those are the three big questions that they have.
Well, I think what's interesting is what you say about concerns about slowing down of growth. It's not a big topic of conversation, but I think this is where folks are worried about that maybe the Fed makes a misstep of raising rates just as growth might be slowing down, and then you just see it exacerbate.
Yeah, so that's not our view. Those are all the fears that are out there. And
but it's interesting to hear that that's what they're thinking a little
absolutely. And we put out our year ahead report yesterday from our CIO team. And, our view is inflation will be transitory. There won't be a policy mistake in the course of that. Clearly there's a risk, but there won't be a policy mistake there. You are going to see, and we spoke about this earlier this morning, Tim, where we talked about the two halves in 22, where, the first half of 22 is going to have that continued growth momentum that we've seen in 2021. Right. Second half of 22, it's going to get a bit more challenging. Comparisons year over year are going to get tougher. But that's going to be the place where investors are going to want to start to think about maybe more defensive sectors like healthcare, as an example. And then there's always, when you get volatility, it's, well, let's take a look and let's think about longer-term trends. So we've got, the CIO team had a really neat phrase that they used. It's about talking about disruptive technology. It's about the ABCs and 5G. So it's really about thinking about AI, big data, cybersecurity, and 5G. And the reason 5G is such a big deal, people look at their phones now. We walk down the street, we see that 5G, and we think the 5G revolution's over. It's just beginning.
Well, that's a really good point. Tom, we've got to run. Thank you so much, though. Really appreciate it, and good luck with this.
Oh, thanks. Great to be here.
It's a really fun thing. Tom Naratil, of course, UBS co-president of Global Wealth Management, on site at the UBS Arena.
Let's head to Washington, D.C. for a check of the latest world and national news. Nancy Lyons is standing by in the 99.1 newsroom. Hey, Nance.
Thanks, Tim. Kyle Rittenhouse has been found not guilty on all charges. The 18-year-old admitted that he shot and killed 2 people and injured a third during public unrest following the police shooting of a black man in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Mark Richards served as his attorney and successfully argued it was a case of self-defense.
There were times we doubted the case. There were times we were confident. And to say that we were relieved would be a gross misunderstatement.
Richards says Rittenhouse has left Kenosha and is heading home about 40 minutes away. Democrats are hailing passage today of the Build Back Better bill following an 8-hour record-breaking filibuster speech from Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy.
Ranking Republican Kevin Brady summed up.
This constitutes an economic surrender to China, Russia, Japan, and Europe, driving American jobs, investment in manufacturing overseas.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
This Democratic Congress are taking our place in the long and honorable heritage of our democracy.
It was Speaker Pelosi who announced the tally.
The yeas are 220. The nays are 213. The Build Back Better bill is passed.
Democrats cheered as the bill went to the Senate, where the process begins all over again. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Pfizer and Moderna say U.S. regulators have opened up COVID-19 booster shots to all adults, letting them choose another dose of either vaccine. The CDC is now considering the booster question this afternoon. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
All right, Nance, thank you so much. We are Businessweek, Carol Master, Tim Standovic, and we're still live at UBS Arena in Elmont, New York. And still with us is Tom Naratil. He's UBS co-president of Global Wealth Management. One thing we wonder, your high net worth individuals, how often are they asking you about crypto, Tom?
They're asking about cryptocurrency quite a bit. We're not always telling them what they want to hear. So, what we're telling them is really the blockchain technology and the fintech ecosystem behind that. That's the place to play.
Okay, so how are you giving them exposure to that space?
So a lot of this gets into private equity and venture capital.
Yeah.
And so it's about picking the managers who are going to explore that space. They're going to have multiple bets because making a bet on one cryptocurrency or another really is a bet. And that's, in our CIO year ahead report, that's the way we phrased it. If you want to make a bet, do that. But don't make it part of your asset allocation as a wealth management client.
So what is the way that you give your clients access to private equity and venture capital?
Yeah, so we work with the industry's top 2 quintile managers in private equity and VC and set up feeder funds for them to participate. And a lot of that is picking the right relationships and the right managers over a long period of time. And what you'll find, you need that expertise and that diversification. Because if you look at VC investing, the winners are great and the losers are painful and the probability of loss is higher. So you need the right kind of expertise to be picking the right plays.
Has it been harder because there's so much money out there kind of chasing ideas right now?
It's getting a bit pricier, for sure. Valuations are certainly getting a little bit more stretched. That's where you need a bit more expertise. But at the same time, these trends, when you look at, for us, AI, big data, cybersecurity, and 5G, there's a lot to run. And as a matter of fact, while we're sitting here in the arena, Verizon's one of our partners here. What they're going to do with 5G in this arena is amazing.
All right, we got to run. Tom, thank you so much. Tom Naratil of UBS Global Wealth Management.
updates, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 43 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all trading mixed. We're looking at a lower day on the S&P, higher on the week, but right now down 6, drop of 0.1%. The Dow down 279, lower by 0.8%. NASDAQ, a record there, 16,055, up 61. Looks like a close above 16,000, up right now by 0.4%. And worth discussing the year-to-date numbers. So far this year, the S&P is up by an even 25%. NASDAQ now up by 24.5%, narrowing the gap. So far this year, the Dow is up by 16.2%. 10-year up 13.30 seconds, 10-year yield 1.53%. Stocks have been fluctuating after hawkish remarks from Fed officials and mounting concern that another wave of the pandemic in Europe could spur more lockdowns. Spot gold down 0.6%, 18.47 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude slumping 3.7%, holding just above $76 a barrel. Down week for crude, 76.10 right now. Bitcoin up 0.5, 57,883 on Bitcoin. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much for that update, Charlie Pellet. It's time now for our weekly crypto update. It's brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Trade crypto for less coin with commissions just 12 to 18 basis points and no hidden spreads or markups. Learn more at ibkr.com/crypto.
All right, so some comments out of the final day of the Bloomberg New Economy Forum in Singapore. That was from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, warning cryptocurrencies have the power to weaken entire countries. So let's get our weekly check on cryptocurrencies. Josh Sterling is with us, former director of the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission's Market Participants Division. CFTC, of course, you know, the principal regulator of the global derivatives markets. He's a partner in the financial markets practice at the global law firm Jones Day, and he joins us on the phone from D.C. Josh, good to have you here on Bloomberg Radio. You know, talk to us about your clients, who you're working with, and what are some of the top issues that they have or need to address in today's environment when it comes to the crypto world.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Carol. I greatly appreciate it. We're working with clients across the spectrum, from traditional financial institutions to startups to corporates, and they're all trying to figure out one simple thing, which is how will digital assets like cryptocurrencies affect their businesses and allow them to grow. And they're doing that at a time where I sit here in Washington, D.C., the direction from the regulators is anything but clear or certain, except that we know more is coming. We just don't know what that is.
It's hard to understand, really, what is coming. And it's interesting because we woke up, a lot of us, to the news earlier this week, and here we are at the UBS Arena in Elmont. But in California, the Staples Center, no longer called the Staples Center, right? The naming rights bought by Crypto.com for more than $700 million, 20 years. It makes me wonder, are we going to be talking about crypto in 20 years?
Well, I think so, or whatever will come from crypto. You know, I think we are in the opening innings of a massive change in the shape and contours of our financial system. I think that you're right. You know, Staples is a fantastic company, a bricks and mortar company, and now we have a crypto company that's sponsoring an arena. And I feel really that we are at the beginning of the 21st century of finance now, where you look at blockchain technology and you look at applications of it, whether it's stable coins or decentralized finance, and there's a degree of interoperability and flexibility that fits really well with the way I think people live their lives now. We are more flexible in our lives and our own arrangements than, say, my folks were in the 70s or 80s, having the same job for 30 years or something. And so it really is something that I think we'll be seeing into the future. I like to say that for my kids, I'm working now to help build the financial system they'll operate in when they're adults.
Well, and I do think about, as regulators increasingly and policymakers check it all out, you know, what is it that they need to kind of keep in mind? Because it's kind of the wild, wild west to some extent, right? We're figuring it out, Josh, as we go to some, right? Like, we haven't quite figured it all out. So what is it that maybe regulators, like I said, have to kind of tread carefully about?
Sure. I know that when I was in a position in government, I always thought very carefully about not stifling innovation and trying to encourage responsible innovation. That was a view we shared on the executive team. And, like you, I have heard this term thrown about that it's the wild, wild west out there. But, I think that's the American frontier by another name. And the frontier is a place where the fortune of a nation can be built. And it's not just in digging the mine, it's in selling the TNT and the donkeys to people that need it. So I guess I've killed that metaphor enough. But the point is, a lot is happening, and sometimes, to flip an old phrase, I wish regulators would, don't do something, just sit there. Let's let the ecosystem build. Let's watch out for, and of course try to curb cases of clear retail fraud. People have been scammed into buying tokens that don't exist, or their money were stolen. Let's watch for that. But in terms of the bones and architecture of the system, let's let it develop, because the millions of innovators out there know more, I think, than the hundreds of regulators here in Washington, D.C.
What's a mistake right now, Josh, that you think regulators have made in this space?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I think my concern is the direction of where it appears we're going with stablecoins. And stablecoins, of course, are the linchpin between dollars, euros, pounds, yen, what have you, fiat currency, and digital currency. It's an exchanging mechanism, a dollar or a yen in, a dollar or a yen out. And we have the President's Working Group, a group of many, if not all, the financial regulators in the state, saying, among other things, that stablecoins really should be offered exclusively by insured depository institutions, FDIC insured. And I'm not sure that that's smart. I think that currently the state-regulated institutions are doing a good job with those products on balance. I think state regimes work pretty well. I think insurance companies, life insurance companies, are very well regulated in this country by the states. And so I wouldn't be so quick to give up on the 50-state experiment that is the United States and trying to regulate stablecoins. I think the concerns there are a little overblown about systemic risk and so forth.
All right, good to check in. I know we just kind of scratched the surface. What are you looking at? So funny.
You got to come back, Josh. We got to talk more. I
We
mean,
did just
government
scratch the
experience on
surface.
both sides certainly helpful.
Well, my
we hope we can
pleasure.
continue.
Thank you both
Josh
for your
Sterling-
time.
You bet. Be well. Have a great weekend. Josh Sterling, he's partner in the financial markets practice at Jones Day there in the nation's capital, joining us on this Friday. Hey, coming up next, we'll do the chart of the day. The Friday
we also
edition.
get the song of the day.
Song of the day.
Is
Friday
it going to be
edition.
hockey related? Is it Harry Styles?
Oh, I love Harry Styles.
And is it going to be
Do you
Harry
love Harry
Styles?
Styles?
I don't know.
Oh, what do you mean
I
you
just
don't
know he's
know?
playing here.
All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Businessweek.
Yes, indeed, everybody. This is Bloomberg Businessweek. Carol Massar along with Tim Stanovic. We are live at the UBS Arena.
I'm trying to
in Elmont,
tweet.
New York.
I'm
Me
trying to
too.
tweet, Carol. How can I tweet and do the show at the same time?
Multitasking, everybody. That's what we're all about.
But actually, check out our Twitter feeds because we're going to tweet out some photos from our interviews earlier in the day. Especially
working on
with,
it. I'm
New
working
York
on it.
Islanders co-owner John Ledecky, Oakview Group CEO Tim Leiweke. But in the meantime, we are looking forward because it's that time of the day for the Song of the Day, the Chart of the Day, and of course, Dave Wilson joining us.
He's on Twitter, by the way.
He is on Twitter.
At
We'll
the
tweet
one
at him.
Dave.
So is Charlie Pellet. In the meantime, let's get a check of the latest when it comes to the markets. Here's Charlie Pellet.
Thank you very much. We got 28 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell right now with the Dow, the S&P. They are both lower. NASDAQ is higher. NASDAQ up 71. We're looking at a record right now, up by 0.4%. The S&P 500 index down 3, drop there of 0.1%. And we have got the Dow Jones Industrial Average down 257, a drop there of 0.7%. Stocks fluctuating after hawkish remarks from Fed officials and mounting concern that another wave of the pandemic in Europe could spur more lockdowns. 10-year yield 1.54%. Spot gold down 0.6%. 18.47 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 3.7%, 76.10 a barrel on WTI. Bitcoin right now up 0.4%, 57,844 on Bitcoin. COVID-19 booster shots from Moderna and the partnership of Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech have been cleared by regulators, U.S. regulators, for all Americans 18 and older, making millions more people eligible for extra protection as concern about a potential winter wave of infections grows. Austria, meanwhile, will enter a nationwide lockdown from Monday as a record spike in coronavirus cases there threatens to overwhelm that country's healthcare system. Reaction from Dr. Andrew Pekosh, a professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health.
It's can't be emphasized enough. Primarily driven by unvaccinated, but we now really have to put boosters on the table to try to see if we can get protection in the vaccinated population to those 90+% levels that we were hoping to see at the beginning of the pandemic or at the beginning of the vaccine rollout.
Dr. Pekosh with the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, which is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Pfizer shares, they are down by 0.9%. BioNTech, the German partner, up by 5.3%. AstraZeneca's ADRs, they're down 0.2%. Moderna shares up by 4.5%. Johnson & Johnson up 0.3. I'm Charlie Pellet. Bring on the song of the day. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much for that update, Charlie Pellet. This is Bloomberg. You know what's funny?
You know who this is. Tim Harrow. He's blushing. He should be blushing. What?
It's Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac, right, Dave Wilson? Is that right?
It was the concert I couldn't go to with my older siblings because I was too young. My parents wouldn't let me go.
You can go your own way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the first album, Fleetwood Mac?
No.
Or second
not,
one?
I mean, maybe the first or second album with Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, but they'd been making albums
it's
long
Rumors.
before
Rumors.
this.
Thank you, Paul Brennan.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a good one.
Right.
I knew-
Some really good Friday energy, Dave.
There's old Fleetwood Mac, like Bare Trees. I mean, that was before.
Even before that, with like Peter Green on
Right?
guitar.
Oh, that's right.
You know, Black Magic Woman, which we know from Santana, was originally a Fleetwood Mac song.
Right? He wrote it, right, Peter Green?
Yeah.
Didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
So,
but I just think it's funny that you two are giving Tim Harrow grief for all the times I've been giving you grief when you didn't know where the song was. Turnabout. Is it fair play? That's a real question.
We just pass it along. Pass it along.
Yeah, I hear
Looking for
ya.
the weak link.
It's talking about
All right,
passing
so-
things along. That's what you have going on in the stock market this year. You know, we tend to think of real estate and utility stocks as a pair in a sense, because you're talking about two industry groups where companies borrow a lot of money, where their dividends historically have been relatively high. So as a result, they tend to be rather sensitive to changes in interest rates. So you tend to think they move together. This year has been a very different story. You look at the S&P 500 real estate index, about 33%, one of the best performers among the 11 main industry groups in the S&P 500. And then you look at what's at the bottom of the pack. Utilities, only up about 6%. And this gap between the two, you're talking about the biggest potentially for a full year since 2010. And this is after 4 years where if you looked at the relative performance of real estate and utilities, they were pretty much in line with each other. So this year, a real difference. And I suppose to some extent you can argue that, with real estate, you're talking about office building owners, you're talking about mall owners, that sort of thing. And, with the pandemic easing at least somewhat, they've been the beneficiaries of that, and utilities in a very different position. And so maybe that explains why this year is different. Nonetheless, it really does sort of stand out when you look at the chart going back to 2002, which is when the real estate index was first calculated.
Dave, I do have to.
What are you doing? Are you fighting a Zamboni or something?
I think they're getting ready for a Fleetwood Mac concert here or something.
No, I believe it's the private jet has landed.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, or a
ready to
helicopter
take
or
off.
something. But please, apologies to our listeners because we are live on the ground, and you can't control the environment when we're doing remotes.
This is life. This is how it goes. That's for sure. But we can control. No, we can't control Dave Wilson either. But he does have a stock of the day. What do you got there?
Well, I've got UWM Holdings, Carol, and those three letters stand for United Wholesale Mortgage. So this is a company that works with mortgage brokers, finds people who want to buy houses, and goes and resells a lot of the loans to investors. In any case, the company went public in January through a blank check deal. The thing is, though, only about 6% of the shares trade publicly under the ticker UWMC. The rest are owned by the company's chairman and CEO, Matt Ishbia, through an entity called SFS Holdings. Now, SFS wanted to sell more shares, increase the amount of stock available for trading. Now, they decided not to go that route. And in fact, instead, UWM is going to accelerate a stock buyback that would have been part of the deal with SFS selling shares. So in other words, they would have bought some of that stock. In any case, you put that all together. At the moment, UWM is up 17.5%. And this is after falling to a record low yesterday and being down something like 20% earlier in the week. So a real recovery here.
Dave Wilson, don't go anywhere because they might have you just do the rest of the show if this keeps happening.
Dave Wilson.
Check out Dave's Stock of the Day just after 4:15 p.m. Wall Street time on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on Twitter at The One Dave.
All right, let's get back to World and National News, where we're thinking it might be a little bit quieter. Nancy Lyons in D.C.
Thanks, Carol. Kyle Rittenhouse has been acquitted of all charges after pleading self-defense in the deadly Kenosha, Wisconsin shootings that became a flashpoint in the nation's debate over guns and racial injustice. President Biden was asked to weigh in on the verdict and admitted he had not been watching the trial.
I stand by what the jury has concluded. The jury system works, and we have to abide by it.
Biden spoke as he returned to the White House following a physical and colonoscopy at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. The procedure requires anesthesia, so he briefly transferred his presidential powers over to Vice President Kamala Harris, making her the first woman to have those powers. The CDC this afternoon has joined the FDA in opening up COVID-19 booster shots to all adults, letting them choose another dose of either the Pfizer, Moderna, or J&J vaccine. Dr. Peter Marks is the FDA's vaccine chief.
We heard loud and clear that people needed something simpler. And this, I think, is simple, right? It's, you receive the vaccines. If it's more than 2 months for Janssen, more than 6 months for Pfizer or Moderna, go out and get a booster. any one of the boosters will do.
Mark says many wanted to receive a booster shot before the Thanksgiving holiday. A new study finds more than 1 million Americans might not regain their sense of smell months after being infected with COVID-19. Researchers at Washington University call it an emerging public health concern brought on by the coronavirus. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
So much. You are listening to Bloomberg Businessweek. Carol Master along with Tim Stanovic. Folks, we are live at the UBS Arena in Elmont, New York. It's a little noisy. They're doing some finishing touches. It's a big day. Ribbon cutting. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, not just a ribbon cutting in a big day, but you see people making their final presentation. I mean, I walked by a column somebody was painting earlier today. There are people in construction hats here putting the final touches on the arena for the official opening tomorrow.
Some stuff going on behind us.
I don't know what it is.
On the rink.
It's loud.
Maybe they're bringing in the ice.
That's like 10 Zamboni sounds, right?
Several
Or a speaker
Zambonis.
system being tested. Who knows?
We might need a wall of oysters, though, to like fend off the sound.
I think that is a good idea.
Because a row of plastic bins sitting in a gravel lot next to Brooklyn's Domino Park Promenade each holds small pieces of New York City's more climate-proof future. They're full of oyster shells.
Leftovers collected from the plates of patrons at more than 45 New York restaurants. Every week, a truck drops the shells off at a Greenpoint processing site. Any ordinary oyster eater can drop off the shells, too. Then the discards, 1.8 million pounds of them to date. They are cleaned, they are cured in the sun, and then they're set with microscopic larvae redeployed in bags all around the city's waters. These recycled shells serve as a home for baby oysters to grow on, Carol, ultimately building a reef that can soften the blow of big waves, ease erosion, and help prevent coastal flooding from rising seas.
I'm a diver. There's some great things in the global oceans that are out there, and just things that naturally occur that help, deal with things like erosion. And when they're gone, you have some problems. And so this is basically using nature to shore up the shorelines.
Yeah, it's one of the many hopeful hypotheses of the Billion Oyster Project. It was founded back in 2014 by the Urban Assembly New York Harbor School on Governor's Island. It's a nonprofit and it partners with local restaurants, schools, and volunteers who aim to establish an army of oysters in New York Harbor by the year 2035.
Yeah, it's all about protecting New York from a growing threat. We've seen it, right? We certainly saw it after some of the storms that we've seen that have been really rough on lower Manhattan and surrounding areas. So they are looking at ways to maybe naturally shore up when it comes to some of the rising rivers and oceans that we are seeing.
So eat those oysters and save the shells.
I'm tuning my oboe, and then we'll maybe play the next segment. You are listening to Bloomberg.
updates, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellett. 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. We will begin with a headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service. Ford and Rivian canceling plans to jointly develop an EV, that according to Automotive News. Ford shares, they are down 1.1%. Rivian up by 4%. It is a mixed day for the U.S. stock market. NASDAQ on track for a record. The S&P now lower by 0.1%, down 5 points. The Dow is down 270 shares of Boeing weighing on the Dow. Right now we have got the Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.8%. NASDAQ, as I mentioned, a record there, up 60, higher by 0.4. 10-year up 12.30 seconds. 10-year yield 1.54%. Less than a month after closing at a record, J.P. Morgan Chase shares find themselves staring down their longest streak in more than 3 decades. Could be 9 losing sessions in a row. J.P. Morgan down now by 1.4%. Gold is down 0.6%, $18.47 the ounce, down $11 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 3.7%, $76.10 a barrel on WTI. Stocks lower after hawkish remarks from Fed officials and mounting concern that another wave of the pandemic in Europe could spur more lockdowns. I'm Charlie Pellett, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much for that update, Charlie Pellett. It's 3:49 on Wall Street.
The following is an editorial from Bloomberg Opinion.
This editorial was written by the Bloomberg editorial board. Talks aimed at reviving the Iran nuclear deal are due to resume later this month. Before that happens, U.S. negotiators need to recall the pact's original purpose, to give the world enough notice should Iran make a dash for the bomb and reject any outcome that fails this test. Former President Donald Trump abandoned the deal in 2018, and Iran's actions since then will make restoring it difficult. Most worryingly, Iran has repeatedly undermined the work of international inspectors. To be sure, a diplomatic solution is still possible. Iran could be offered humanitarian aid and limited sanctions relief if it takes steps to limit nuclear enrichment and cooperate with inspectors. But the original deal's weaknesses need to be kept firmly in mind, and settling for a new one that's even weaker should be out of the question. This editorial was written by the Bloomberg editorial board. For more Bloomberg opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN GO on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
I'm driving in my car.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. This is not a toy.
Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
It's
the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's get to it. We've just got about 10 minutes to wrap up the trading day and the trading week, and definitely a down day. Certainly concerned about COVID once again, and we're seeing that play out in the equity markets. With us for the Drive to the Close is Solita Marcelli, Chief Investment Officer, Americas, UBS Global Wealth Management, on the phone in New York City. Solita, good to have you here. It's been fun chatting with some of your UBS colleagues here at the UBS Arena. What's interesting, too, though, is, we talked about the arena. We talked about what's going on in the environment. One of the things top of mind is the next Fed chair. And curious what's top of mind when that topic comes up for you.
Yes. Hi, Carol and Tim. Great to be with you. It's certainly top of mind. But look, it's the Fed chair seat that is going to be determined, but also there's going to be a couple of other seats there. We actually don't believe Biden, is going to appoint a bunch of super doves to the Fed board. It is
you don't believe that?
No, that's not the base case. I mean, look, it is very common for politicians to prefer, central bankers to promote economic growth by keeping monetary policy loose. But I think under the current circumstances, that strategy could be counterproductive for President Biden, given that inflation is high and will weigh on his approval rating. So our base case actually is that he would reappoint Powell And Powell has repeatedly said that Fed will act, to use tools to rein in inflation, and inflation remains sustainably high. And I think markets will likely be comfortable if he stays on as chair. Powell has also strong bipartisan support, so he's likely to be easily confirmed by the Senate.
Okay, but what if he doesn't? And apologies again to you and our audience. They're doing some sound checking here, it sounds like, at the UBS Arena. But what if he doesn't reappoint Fed Chair Powell?
Okay, so, I would say the other choice, that is being discussed a lot is Brainerd, right? And I think this is seen by some as more dovish than Powell. But in our view, actually, she's not that far from the center among FOMC members. I mean, she really hasn't, dissented, from Powell on monetary policy. She has I think, practical approach, and I think monetary policy would continue if she were to be the next Fed chair. However, where there's a clear policy difference, I would say, between, Powell and Brainerd is on bank regulation, right? So if Biden decides to, keep Powell, then we would expect him to appoint Brainerd as vice chair for supervision, giving her extra responsibilities for bank regulation. And then we should expect to see some type of regulation in the years ahead. So if it's between the two of them, I think we're still seeing a continuation of the monetary policy. It's also the other seats that we have to think about.
So, Lita, is it in terms of who is at the top of the Fed or composition of the Fed? We know it's academic to some extent. There's a lot of conversations that go on with all the Fed members. But who's ever at the top, will it be the same in terms of the impact on Main Street as well as Wall Street? Or could a different Fed head have some different implications for Wall Street versus Main Street?
Oh, if it were, it's a little hard to hear, guys, but if the Fed chair were to be someone from the Main Street, is that?
No. What I'm saying is, in terms of who, and forgive us, we are at the UBS Arena, and they're still putting finishing touches, and they are checking out the audio system here, and I know our audio complicates our audio. But in terms of who is at the top of the Federal Reserve, whether it's Brainerd or Powell, will that potentially impact, let's say, Main Street more than Wall Street? In other words, could it have some different implications for those two different groups, if you will?
I don't think so. We don't see that much of a difference between the two in terms of, perception from monetary policy. But again, I think Powell has been in the seat. He's been tested. I think he certainly does have, I think, for example, from the progressive perspective, right, even though there has been some, pushback because he, in terms of his reaction to inflation, I would say that he certainly emphasized issues that are important to Democrats, like taking a broad view of the Fed's mandate to promote and, maximum employment, as well as promoting diversity within the Fed itself. So I think, in my view, I don't think there's going to be that much of a difference in terms of perception between the two, but I think Powell certainly has the incumbent, advantage, and is already tested, is already know his people. I think people are comfortable with his style of communication as well. So, I think, it would be more in his favor.
So, Lita Marcelli, we are going to have to leave it there. Chief Investment Officer of the Americas at UBS Global Wealth Management. Again, apologies to have to wrap you just a little bit early, and to our audience right now. Again, we are live from the UBS Arena, and it appears there's some sort of sound check going on. That is relatively loud. At least to us. And I imagine to our audience as well.
It was a little tricky, certainly for us to hear, so we apologize for anything that came across a little funky. As we said, we are having a little bit of a live sound check here, so it's a little tricky right now. Counting you down, though, to the closing bell at this point, and we've just got a few minutes left in today's trading session, and it's definitely been a different tone in terms of the trade today. Different tone now in our audio background there. But bouncing around a little bit again, once again, we're seeing worries about COVID. We've seen stories on the Bloomberg. I think it's really telling about COVID being the elephant in the room, and it's catching investors and strategists off guard once again when it comes to reminding us that we're not out of this pandemic. And so we're starting to see increased lockdowns over in Europe, and that is certainly worrying investors again about what kind of economic slowdowns or shutdowns we will see once again.
That's absolutely what I'm keeping my eye on, because it does feel like we're at a different part, but look what investors are saying.
Yeah, exactly. All right, folks, it is time for Beyond the Bell with our TV team. You'll see the market close live on radio, TV, and YouTube.
Beyond the Bell, Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick, Caroline Hyde, Taylor Riggs counting you down to the closing bell, here to help take us beyond the bell. It's our global simulcast, joined now by a roving Carol Masser and a roving Tim Stenovic, live at the UBS Arena, bringing together our Bloomberg television, radio, and YouTube audiences. We'll get to the markets in a moment. Why, Carol, are you at the UBS Arena?
All right, because it's opening up, the ribbon cutting today. Finally, the Islanders have a home base to play. They've been on the road for the beginning of the season.
Very soothing music. And I think they would amp up the music a little bit, right?
Look at you. Well, we thought we'd serenade you, Romaine. This is just for you, specifically.
I am amazed they haven't rebranded this as a crypto name yet. Kudos to UBS for managing to keep it the UBS Arena for now.
Yeah. Tim, you got anything important to say?
I am having trouble hearing you, but what I'm telling you as far as what I saw in the markets today, I think it's a good reminder, Taylor, that COVID is not gone yet. I got to tell you, it does feel like COVID is gone for us here today. That's certainly the way that we're interacting with people, the way that we're seeing people, the way that they're talking about, having hockey here tomorrow. But look what happened with airlines and cruises and companies that consumers have to spend discretionary income on. Lower, not just today, but over the last couple of weeks as well, Taylor.
Yeah, really well said. And, Caroline, it's so interesting when he talked about some of the COVID issues that we've been facing in Europe. I know that you've been keeping sort of abreast of those, but some of those CDC headlines, it didn't really change the risk on sentiment here. You did get a sense that there was some defensiveness under play, but really hard to be paying attention to cases when the focus really should be on those hospitalizations and really what it means for this reopening.
Yeah, we should point out airlines as a group down for a fourth straight day here. Let's get you caught up here on the closing bells here in New York. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is in the red here, down about 269 points, or about 0.7% or so here on the day. That's going to be down about 1% or so on a weekly basis. The S&P 500 going to finish the day in the red. It did poke into the green a little bit earlier, but now down about 0.1% here. It's going to be up on a weekly basis by about 0.3%. There's the NASDAQ. We've been talking a lot about it today. That's your outperformer on the day, up about 0.4%. Now in oversold conditions here, and a lot of people are going to look at that and overlay that with the Russell 2000, which is now heading into, I should say, NASDAQ in overbought conditions, Russell heading into oversold conditions, and is down on the day here and on the week. Interesting moves, and I think it kind of tells you where investors' mindsets are at.
Yeah, lowest since October 29th for the Russell 2000. This really is a focus on sentiment, a focus on the fact that maybe this reopening trade isn't going to take off in the way many people had hoped. People starting to get a little bit cautious. They eye numbers coming from Europe when it comes to COVID and wanting the protection of big tech.
Yeah, you certainly see that underplay here, Caroline, as we take a look, as we always do for our radio audience, with some of the sector winners, some of the sector losers. Some of the sector winners, it is technology. Caroline, like you said, you're up 1.2%. It is semiconductor. Some of the semiconductor equipment, we've heard some of the positive comments from Micron, for example, despite some concerns from ANAT yesterday. Auto components and auto companies are still up in the lead, about 2.3%. How much of that, though, is sort of a bond story? Dare I go there, Caroline, as we think about some of the losers on the screen? What is off more than 1%? It's some of the hardware and the equipment, but it's banks and it's energy. It seems to be, at least for today, just a little bit of an unwind of some of that cyclical inflationary trade.
And we should point out, too, just you hit some of the individual names, but you got Intuit, Micron. Those are your leaders in the S&P 500 on this day. A lot of those, of course, names in the energy sector are lower. Devon Energy, that's your big decliner. And we got to mention the banks. JP Morgan having a phenomenal losing streak. This is the longest losing streak we've seen for JP Morgan going back to 1988. 9 straight days here.
9 straight days. That's as we see bond yields, of course, push lower. Some of the banks can't catch a bid when that's the sort of forces they're working against. But we're also looking at a cross-asset story that shows some risk aversion here. When you're looking at your FX vertical, it is basically red across your screens, all apart from that Bloomberg dollar index, which is currently up 0.4%. When the dollar is back at a one-year high, we're worried about the virus. We're, of course, seeking out those sorts of havens. It was notable that the Japanese yen was really the only other key G10 currency that was outperforming another key haven trade. Meanwhile, I mean, what is going on with milk? It's at the top of your screens when it comes to... I mean, I always fail to actually find anything that's particularly on the terminal to tell me why. But, I mean, let's call it supply chain issues, shall we say, inflationary pressures, whatever it is, that's certainly going to be eating into your grocery store.
Well, at some point, you have to do a whole segment on milk and really look at a long-term chart. And I'll give you a reason why it's at the top of your screen. It's been going up, Caroline.
Yeah.
Is it our what'd you miss? For I
don't know. A whole 30 minutes on milk.
I find the key headline: American cows are making less milk as farmers cut back on their feed. They have it. Worries about the supply chain. I told you it was supply chain.
So mean.
Supply chain affects everything.
The cows.
You only get this stuff right here on Beyond the Bell.
How is that oat juicing?
I don't know. Are Carol and Tim, what happened? Did we just jettison them off? Or are they out skating on the ice?
Some arena
there was a lot of
sound
noise.
cues there. So we're just going to take it over for now while we sort of figure out maybe what's going on there.
You see they have those big microphones. Are they calling the game?
Yeah, it kind of looked like it,
I wasn't
right?
quite clear.
Let's take a look at where we are on the weekly yields. And you guys, this was a week, I hate to say it, bond price higher, yield lower, all across the board. We started the week at a 161 on 10s, down to a 154. On 30s, 2%, we're down to a 191. So Romain, you're really coming down on the week when you think about some of the risk-off feelings that we've had. And dare I say, there were a lot of headlines. I'm just going to bring up a few from Rich Clarida that we got over at the Fed, and saying it might be appropriate in December to discuss the tapering pace. Do we need to increase some of the tapering paces that we've been seeing given some of the data as of late?
Yeah, and I mean,
but he's not going to be vice chair for that much longer.
That's a good point. In fact, a lot of the commentary we're hearing lately, unfortunately, is from people who may not necessarily have a say in the matter as we get into next year. And of course, we're still sort of on Biden watch here to see if they finally make an announcement about renominating Powell or going in another direction, presumably with Lael Brainerd.
And I think we're going to have a good conversation with Jared Bernstein in about 20 minutes from now for the TV audience. I think one of the key questions that Michael McKee has been bringing up is why wait so long? Given, of course, how slow the Senate moves, why did we wait until the last minute when you don't want a Fed without some of these positions filled really early into next year?
Yeah, it leaves the market with anxiety, with a lack of clarity, uncertainty as to we navigate unprecedented times. That's an overused phrase, I realize, but it currently is that. And we still also bring it back to, once again, fears, whether it comes to COVID. And indeed, Carol, I mean, you're out there at the moment in the field trying to experience from a micro level what it's like to be weathering what are COVID issues on one side, but the desire to get out there and celebrate on the other.
Yeah, and this is what this place is all about. They have structured it so it's about experiences, people being in large open facilities where they can gather. They're getting ready for Harry Styles to do a concert here. I mean, people are coming back. What's interesting, we talked with Tim, come on, Tim Lewicki, who was crucial in developing this and helping fund it, privately funding this, mentioned that, man, if they had waited a little bit, they had some supply chain troubles as they were putting it together, but if they'd waited a little bit, the cost of it probably would have gotten up because of inflation specifically. Well, so I am all of these are playing out in real life.
I'm curious. So, I mean, this is basically, for those who don't know, this is basically going to be the home of the New York Islanders hockey team, which they used to be based out there in Long Island, and then they moved to Brooklyn for some period of time, and then everybody on Long Island complained about going to Brooklyn to watch a hockey game. So now they're back in Long Island. Is that right?
That's right. They actually haven't had a real home, since the Coliseum. So they've kind of been without a permanent home for just a few years. So the fans certainly have been patient. And look, we spoke to the co-owner of the team earlier today. He said that he actually went around for the past few years speaking to hundreds of fans at games in order to understand what they actually wanted in a new arena. Hey, we're getting ready for a concert here, I guess.
It's Friday, everybody.
They're rocking out. They are rocking out.
Harry Styles performing tonight?
No,
not tonight.
Not tonight. Soon.
No, it's all about sports, and then it's all about Harry Styles'
I have so
outfits.
many questions, and they never
so
want
many
to ask questions. Who's performing tonight? Because it's not the Islanders, right? Because they wouldn't be warming up on base.
We need Scarlett Fu. She's the ice hockey
There's
expert
so many
around
questions.
here. So
They're
many
talking,
questions.
I don't hear their mics.
Meanwhile, I mean, I think we need to call it quits on this Friday. It's been a lot of fun having Carol and Tim out there at the UBS
That was our
Arena.
final play, everyone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Enjoy that. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the warm-up acts. Enjoy the music, Carol and Tim. We're going to miss them. Meanwhile, of course, we're going to do it all once again on Monday with our Beyond the Bell segment. But more markets coverage coming up right here. Of course, as Taylor was just saying, Jared Bernstein's going to be joining us. Member of the White House.
This is Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Masser and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovic on Bloomberg Radio.
Hi. All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Businessweek. Carol Masser along with Tim Stenovic. Thank you to all of our audience. We know that was a little frustrating, a lot of sound, a lot of audio, but you did get to get a feel of how the market closed for this Friday and certainly for the week overall. What, Tim?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the week. Because look at this, we do have, when it comes to the week, a down week for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, but still a winning week for the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ finishing the week off higher by, more than 1.2%.
A little tortured, though, in terms of some back and forth here. And we're getting some back and forth here with the audio.
A little torture.
But we still have some big decisions, some economic news next week, and we'll see if we'll find out exactly if Jay Powell, well, we will know if he gets a second term or whether there'll be a change at the top of the Federal
You and I were
Reserve.
Sitting here 3 days ago, Carol, at the studio, and we were wondering if on Friday afternoon after the markets closed, we'd get news from the White House about who President Biden's pick would be for the next term as Fed chair.
Exactly.
And now we're hearing that from Jen Psaki that it's going to come before Thanksgiving. It raises the question, why continue to wait?
Well, I don't know. I have no idea. And who knows what's going on. We've heard senators, members of Congress weighing in on this. We know the president got a colonoscopy today. But it is interesting as why it's being so drawn out at this point and why we keep getting kind of bits and pieces of information. And the market, I think, is just going to wait and see what ultimately
Has it ever been like this? You've covered this for years. Has it ever been like this?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember. I don't remember it feeling so drawn out. Anyways, we're going to continue here on Bloomberg Businessweek live at the UBS Arena. Carol Masser, Tim Stenovic. In the meantime, let's get to world and national news.
Nancy Lyons is standing by in Washington, D.C. in the 991 newsroom. Hey, Nance.
Thanks so much, Tim. Kyle Rittenhouse, the teen who shot and killed 2 men in a chaotic Black Lives Matter protest in Wisconsin last year, was acquitted of all charges today in a case that became a touchstone for the nation's sharply divided political left and right. His attorney, Mark Richards, successfully argued that Rittenhouse had acted in self-defense. He says his client is grateful.
He has a huge sense of relief for what the jury did to him today. He wishes none of this would have ever happened.
Richard says it's likely Rittenhouse will move away from the area to get on with his life. President Biden, when learning of the verdict, urged calm and said the jury's decision should be respected. Well, President Biden turned 79 tomorrow, and today he received an early birthday present, House passage of his Build Back Better plan. Now it heads to the Senate, where House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says it does have a chance for passage.
90-some% of the bill was written together, House, Senate, White House. There were some differences at the end, and we'll deal with those as we go forward.
Pelosi calls the bill transformative. President Biden is pleased with today's vote on Build Back Better, but does not expect a Senate vote until after Thanksgiving. He spent part of his morning at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center undergoing a physical and colonoscopy. He was asked, how did it go?
I feel great. Nothing's changed. We're in great shape. And so, I'm looking forward to celebrating my 58th birthday.
Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
All right, Nance, thank you so much. Carol Masser, along with Tim Stenovic. We are live at the UBS Arena in Elmont, New York. Interesting day, and we appreciate all our listeners and their patience because there's been some loud sounds. They're finishing construction.
Oh, there's another one. Another loud sound.
They're doing some sound checks. Listen, This is a big day for them. The ribbon cutting, things are getting official. They're going to have the first Islanders home game this weekend, tomorrow. It's a big deal.
It's a very big deal. The UBS Arena, I think, for a lot of people who live on Long Island, it's known as the home of the Islanders. But as we learned earlier in the day from Tim Leiweke, the Oakley crew, this is much more than that. He really focused when we talked to him about the ability of this as an arena to attract the biggest and best acts in the country.
Right.
And the way he did that, and the way that his group did that in designing this, was to make it acoustically one of the best places that they could play.
It was adorable, I have to say. Like, he was just saying, hey, see those panels over there? They look like wood panels, but if you get up closer, they were specially designed so that it would improve. They were actually kind of porous, if you will.
They're porous. You can actually see the holes in the wood panels.
And it was all about making the best acoustics as possible. What they really thought about, and John Ledecky talked about this, of course, the owner of the Islanders said, we reached out to fans, and Tim Lewicki talked about talking to entertainers. What did they want in a venue? So they really talked to the different groups so that they could really design this from the ground up with sports and entertainment in mind.
But it's so important in order to keep a place this expensive a development, over $1 billion, something that costs so much to operate. It has to be multi-purpose. It can't be something that only attracts fans and only brings in revenue for sports. It has
can't have
to be
any dark days, right?
Exactly. It can't have any dark days. It has to have multi-use.
Well, they talked about Harry Styles, and when they put it out
Are you
as
ready?
a venue.
You're going?
My nieces just went.
Oh.
Why not?
Why not?
But what's interesting is when they put it out, he talked about it being basically oversubscribed, right? People just wanted to buy tickets. So they are going to be competing with Barclays, with the Garden, although they said, listen, the Garden is its own venue, but nonetheless, they'll be competing for all of those acts.
Are you going to make it out here?
Maybe. We'll see.
It's close.
All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek on Bloomberg Radio.
updates, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A down Friday, but an up week. This week, the S&P 500 index gained 0.3%. NASDAQ this week up 1.2%, but the Dow this week tumbled 1.4%. NASDAQ heading into the weekend at a record up 63 points today, closing above 16,000 for the first time. 16,057 on NASDAQ, up today by 0.4%. S&P fell 6, lower little change, down 0.1%. The Dow down 268, down by 0.8%. Boeing weighing on the Dow. Stocks retreated after hawkish remarks from Fed officials and mounting concern that another wave of the pandemic in Europe could spur more lockdowns. 10-year yield 1.53%, gold down 0.6, $18.47 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 3.7%, $76.10 for a barrel of WTI. Less than a month after closing at a record, J.P. Morgan Chase shares find themselves grappling with their longest losing streak in more than 3 decades. Shares of J.P. Morgan Chase down 1.3% today, down for a 9th straight session, longest string of losses since March of 1988. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much for that update, Charlie Pellet. Bloomberg Business Week is brought to you by SEI. Crises emphasize character and partnership. One mission, one community. SEI. Go to SEIC.com/IMS.
All right, we did want to get to a D.C. roundup on this Friday. House passing President Biden's tax and spending plan. We got that earlier today. Now moves off to the Senate. We're still waiting on any news of a change at the Fed. Let's get that roundup with Jody Schneider. She's political news director for Bloomberg TV and Radio. She's back in our interactive broker studio. You're hearing some audio and some music.
I'm dancing.
Tim and I are still here at the UBS Arena. Jody, another busy day in D.C. Where shall we begin? First of all, should we talk about the president's tax and spending plan?
Sure, we could talk about that, or the pardoning of the turkeys could come later.
Oh, no, we could start there, too.
Okay, peanut butter and jelly. There are 2 turkeys.
Yeah.
Peanut butter's one, jelly's the other. They got pardoned. So it's a tradition that started with George Bush. And, so he was at the White House to do that after the spending this morning, getting a physical. So the president's had a busy day. But on Capitol Hill, where it was even more important than the turkey pardoning, they did pass the House passed the Build Back Better plan, as it's being called. It didn't happen as quickly as they thought. First of all, for weeks they've been talking about this, but they finally agreed to have a vote, and then last night the House Minority Leader decided to have a 8.5 hour, 8 hours and 32 minutes to be exact.
Uninterrupted, right?
Uninterrupted speech. It's not a filibuster when it happens in the House, by the way. It's not called that.
Okay.
It's just a very long speech.
Okay.
By the way, for congressional nerds, this actually was longer than the 8-hour something speech that Nancy Pelosi, the current House Speaker, gave several years ago during the Affordable Care Act deliberations in the House. So he has now, Mr. McCarthy has now exceeded her in that. But they did go ahead and pass that plan, which of course is the president's signature plan, which would expand the social safety net, have some things that address climate change and really change tax policy in the nation. So that ended up passing by 220 to 213. Only one Democrat voted no, and no Republicans voted for it. So not such a bipartisan measure. It will now go to the Senate, where now it gets a lot more complicated, of course, once it heads over there.
So what happens to it in the Senate, and what do you know about Democrats, moderate Democrats? I'm talking about Senator Sinema and of course, a Democrat from West Virginia, Senator Manchin, who have both made it very difficult, I think, a lot of people would say, for Democrats, at least in the Senate, to move their legislation. What do we know about the way they feel about this?
Yeah, and you're right. Those are the two people who will have a large say in what happens over there because the Senate is evenly split. I mean, the Democrats are, they control it by one vote. They would have the vice president to break a tie, but they need both Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, and they've yet to give their public support to it. Basically, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, he doesn't like the 4 weeks of guaranteed paid family leave in the House bill. He's also said it's too expensive. He also is concerned about an immigration proposal in there that would grant deportation relief for some undocumented immigrants, and he doesn't like the new Medicare hearing aid benefit. So there's a number of things. Also, the progressives in the House, they're a problem. If it goes over there and gets watered down, or in their view, watered down, they say they won't vote for it to come back when it comes back to the House. You have to pass the same exact bill to go to the president's desk. So this is far from done now. It's done in the House for now, but we'll have to see what happens in the Senate. And we are also now awaiting. We're still awaiting, but I guess the longer it goes on, the more with bated breath. We are waiting for the announcement of a new Fed chair, or the same Fed chair, but Powell would either get his job again as chairman of the Fed, or whether the president would nominate somebody new.
Jody, it does feel kind of weird. Tim was saying to me, do you remember it playing out this way in the past where we kind of were getting, 4 days, oh no, now next week, and it just feels like it's been dragging on a little bit. Is there something unusual going on this year?
Yeah, I think it feels like it's been dragging on because it kind of is. We had thought in September we might get some, we were kind of led to believe, I guess, that there was going to be an announcement, and then the president said soon, and then the other day, Tuesday, he said 4 days. Now they say before Thanksgiving. And now we have Joe Manchin telling Anne-Marie Hordern last night that, I want to talk to both current Chair Powell and the other front runner for the job, Lael Brainerd. I'd like to talk to them before I make up my mind. So, and we had two more Democrats come out and say they would not support the current Chair Powell in a confirmation vote in the Senate, although there are enough Republicans and enough Democrats who it seems like he could still get through with the people we've heard from so far. But it is, people are all expressing their opinions, and yet we haven't heard from the president about what he is going to do with that nomination.
Which just means we're going to be talking about it next week as we count down to Thanksgiving. Jody, thank you so much. Really a great summary of the comings and goings of the nation's capital. Jody Schneider, she's political news director for us here at Bloomberg TV and Radio. What,
I
Tim?
really thought that we would have a Fed chair announcement by now.
I don't know.
We're going to have to keep waiting.
As my parents used to say.
Mike McKee's going to have to stay at the office.
When it happens.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Radio.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Businessweek.
You are listening to Bloomberg Businessweek. Carol Massar, Tim Stanovic. We're live at UBS Arena in Elmont, New York. And coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about ESG.
Yeah, Carol, you talk about this all the time. I know you've spent a lot of time on panels of late talking about ESG, but money has been flowing into ESG big time.
At the same time, people are questioning, they want transparency. They want to understand exactly what they're investing in.
Do we need a new metric?
Exactly. All right, we're going to talk about that with Andrew Lee over at UBS Global Wealth Management in just a moment.
In the meantime, a check of the trading day and how it wrapped up. Here's Charlie Pelley.
Hi, thank you very much. We wrapped up at a record, Tim, at least for the NASDAQ Composite Index this week, up 1.2%. Look where it closed, above 16,000 for the first time. 16,057 on NASDAQ today, up 63, up 0.4%, bringing the year-to-date gain now to 24.5%, just 0.5% away from the S&P 500 index for the year. That index up by 25%. A down Friday, winning week on the S&P. For the week, the S&P eked out a gain of 0.3%. Today, down 6, lower by 0.1%. The Dow dropped 268. Boeing weighing on the Dow today. The Dow was down by 0.8%. Stocks retreating after hawkish remarks from Fed officials and mounting concern that another wave of the pandemic in Europe could spur more lockdowns. 10-year yield 1.54%. Gold down 0.6%, 18.47 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 3.7%, 76.10 a barrel on WTI. Lots of speculation about who President Biden will be naming as the next Fed chair. He has said to expect a decision before Thanksgiving, and it's a choice between renominating Jay Powell or picking Fed Governor Lael Brainerd. Laura Rain is chief economist at FS Investments, and today she told us she believes that the president will stick with Powell.
If I'm in Biden's chair, renominating Powell, somebody that Trump put into office, just gives me cover should inflation not resolve by the time the next election cycle runs around.
Walt Disney's adding Disney Plus and ESPN Plus to its Hulu Plus live TV product and raising the price by $5 a month. Also, Miami's City Commission has voted to remove electric scooters from the streets, dealing a blow to the industry as South Florida heads into the traditionally bustling winter season for visitors. Bird Global, one of the largest scooter rental companies, down 1.8% today, extending its loss for the week to just about 25%. Again, recapping, S&P fell 6 points today, down 0.1%. Spot gold, 18.47 the ounce, down 0.6. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, really appreciate that, Charlie. Well, money has, no doubt about it, been flowing into ESG big time. Global sustainable mutual fund assets hitting a fresh record high. We saw that in the second quarter. And Bloomberg has reported that ESG assets may hit 53 trillion, Tim, by 2025, making up 1/3 of global assets under management.
Well, let's bring in Andrew Lee, Managing Director, Global Head of Sustainable and Impact Investing at UBS Global Wealth Management, joining us on the phone. Andrew, how are you?
Good. How are you, Tim? How are you, Carol? Thanks for having me.
Good.
We're doing well. Yeah, thank you. Hey, let's talk a little bit about what you're seeing at UBS right now. What are clients telling you about how they're thinking about sustainable and impact investing? Are you starting to hear from high net worth individuals that they want to make the investments in ESG-friendly companies?
We are, and we've been seeing this for actually a few years now, right? So we've been pre-pandemic even. We saw a lot of assets start to flow into sustainable investments. There's a recognition that sustainability is important for investments and that people want to start matching their investments with the things that they preference or think about and how their investments actually impact broader society and the environment. So we continue to see inflows into that. We actually saw an acceleration of that interest through the pandemic, interestingly, right? So even as you saw assets come out of traditional investments, we saw continued flow into sustainable investments. It's one of the fastest growing areas within, our global wealth assets for private clients. So a real signal of interest there.
Well, it's interesting to be talking to you. As we can hear in the background, they're testing out still the audio system here.
It works.
It works. But what's fascinating is, Andrew, we talked earlier with Tim Lewicki and John Ledecky. And Tim talked to us specifically about this being carbon neutral by 2024, first arena on the Eastern Seaboard to do so. So you are seeing the private sector, private development continue to make inroads in ESG and really push the needle forward. And it really mirrors what's going on in the investment community. How particular, though, are investors when it comes to ESG investments? Because you know this better than most, right? Not all ESG investments are the same.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Carol. I mean, there is a lot under the ESG or the sustainable investment umbrella, and it can range from everything from excluding investments from portfolios to utilizing sustainability factors to enhance an investment process, all the way to the most intentional approaches of sustainable themed types of products, or even impact investing, right, where clients or investors are trying to make an intentional, measurable difference in terms of positive change with their investment. So there's a lot in there, and I think the most important thing from our perspective is that sustainability matters. Sustainability means different things to different people, right? So to some clients it's more of the latter, to some clients it's more of the former, and so trying to understand what people are trying to achieve with their investments and how they want to incorporate sustainability into those investments, and then matching it up properly with the right types of solutions, that's what's most important in the end, because those solutions ultimately have to deliver. So every portfolio is going to look different.
So Andrew, how do you define ESG at UBS?
So for us, sustainable investing broadly is any strategy or investment that incorporates environmental, social, and governance considerations into the process and into the strategy of the investment itself. So there's got to be some objective, something that is in the strategy or the investment that is about sustainability. So if we think about, one exposure might be sustainable themes, right? So getting exposure to climate themes or healthcare or education. A distinct strategy might be, investing in the equities or bonds of companies that demonstrate leadership on environmental, social, and governance considerations. So how they run their businesses, not necessarily the products and services that they're delivering, right? So a range of different things in there, but for us, it's about the intentionality of the strategy and the fact that there is a sustainability objective in there. That, for us, is sustainable investing. But incorporating it throughout the process and the strategy, that's how we define it. But there are a range of different strategies and instruments underneath that.
Yeah, and we feel like it just continues to develop every day. Andrew, thank you so much, and hopefully we can come back to you at a future date. Andrew Lee, Global Head of Sustainable and Impact Investing at UBS Global Wealth Management, with us on the phone in New York City.
You and I often talk about the different metrics that perhaps are needed when it comes to ESG, because we are just wrapping up earnings season, and we see companies move in the after-hours trading when the company reports guidance that misses expectations, or top-line or bottom-line growth that missed expectations, and we don't see it move.
No.
Because of ESG concerns.
Exactly, and you do wonder where this ultimately goes. And if there's not some kind of financial penalty or measurement, do investors really ultimately care when it comes to a particular company? All right, let's do some news.
And Nancy Lyons is standing by in Washington, D.C. Hey there, Nance.
Hey, Tim. A jury in Kenosha, Wisconsin has found Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty on all counts. Following last year's deadly shooting at a protest, Rittenhouse was 17 when he traveled across state lines with a militia group and shot 3 people with an assault rifle, killing 2. He says he fired in self-defense, and jurors apparently agreed.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
The family of Anthony Huber, one of the men killed by Rittenhouse, says they're heartbroken and angry about the acquittal. Democratic leaders are cheering House passage of the social spending bill. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi spoke on the floor ahead of today's vote.
With the passage of the Build Back Better Act, we, this Democratic Congress, are taking our place in the long and honorable heritage of our democracy, with legislation that will be the pillar of health and financial security in America.
Pelosi is confident it will pass the Senate. The nearly $2 trillion measure expands the social safety net while combating climate change. It's one of President Biden's top legislative priorities. Well, Vice President Harris made history today as President Biden underwent a medical procedure. She became the first woman in American history to hold the powers of the presidency, even if it was for a short time. Biden had a colonoscopy as part of his annual physical and transferred presidential powers. to Harris briefly while he was under anesthesia. A CDC panel is following the lead of the FDA and is authorizing COVID-19 boosters for all adults. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky is now the final word. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts.
All right, Nancy, thank you so much. Hey,
thank you, Carol.
I didn't know you were talking
because you
it's
can't
a
hear
little
me.
loud here. All right, Carol Master, Tim Stenovic at the UBS Arena out here in Elmont, New York. They're just gearing up for a lot of stuff this evening and certainly into the weekend. The Islanders playing their first home game here tomorrow.
Are you gearing up for an Apple car?
I don't know. Are they gearing up? Are they ready for one?
Question.
Do they have one for me yet?
Not yet. Well, we do know that Apple is venturing into cars. At least that's what reporting has said. Could shake up the electric vehicles market in the same way that the iPhone revolutionized the mobile communications industry in 2007, at least says Morgan Stanley.
What's so interesting about this, if you think about smartphones, Apple was not the first one to come out in the market, right?
Nope.
But you think about smartphones, and who do you think of right now?
You think of the iPhone.
Right. And forgive me, we also think of Android and the operating system, but you really do think of the Apple
But that's
iPhone.
the operating system, right?
Exactly.
That's not the actual hardware.
Exactly.
Yeah, look, you make a really good point. It's the same story that Apple's had with pretty much every consumer product category that it's gone into in the last 30 years.
Don't have to be first.
They weren't the first portable music player, but what they did was they created an iPod that allowed you to take, for lack of a better phrase, thousands of songs in your pocket and do it in an easy way.
Right.
They didn't create the first tablet, but they created the iPad that allowed consumers to use a tablet in a different way.
Right. So here they are watching the EV market, right, kind of unfold.
Yeah.
And so Apple is planning to launch a car with full self-driving capabilities by 2025. So it's not just EV, it's really about autonomous driving, really high tech, if you will. The $10 trillion global mobility market up for grabs, and if Apple enters the space, it could be a clear negative for car makers such as Ford, Tesla, Morgan Stanley Autos analyst Adam Jonas putting out in a note.
We did learn yesterday that Apple shares rose nearly 3% to fresh all-time highs, wrestling back its crown as the world's most valuable listed company from Microsoft. Stock extending gains today, rising as much as 0.7%. Carol, if cars drive themselves, could they use their iPhones?
Exactly. You could spend more time on your iPhones. I mean, it's brilliant. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek on Bloomberg Radio.
facts, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Winning week for the S&P 500 index this week, up by 0.3% as we head into the weekend. NASDAQ closing above 16,000 for the first time, up 63 points today, up 0.4%. That is a record for the NASDAQ Composite Index. The Dow slumped 268 points, down 0.8%. The Dow was weighed down by shares of Boeing today. Stocks retreated after hawkish remarks from Fed officials and mounting concern that another wave of the pandemic in Europe could spur more lockdowns. 10-year up 11/32, 10-year yield 1.54%. Gold down 0.7%, $18.45 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 3.7%, $76.10 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh, Secretary of Labor, about what the Build Back Better package passed by the House would mean for workers.
Well, first of all, it's transformational. This bill is a historic bill for the country. There's investments in child care, investments in elder care, investments in pharmaceuticals and bringing down the cost of prescription drugs. There's investments in education, long-term universal pre-kindergarten, child care. There's investments in job training, workforce development, apprenticeships, particularly when you think about, at least for the Department of Labor standpoint, when you think about lots of the conversations in the country right now are about what's going on in the work world. We have an opportunity to help people find new careers and get into the middle class. And there are a lot of great aspects. It's the real first time that I remember in the history of our country that we've made an investment like this in people. And I think that's going to be a game changer for a lot of families in America in creating pathways into the middle class.
Secretary Walsh, what does it mean potentially for the Department of Labor and its ability to enforce things like wage and hour laws and regulations and also safety and health regulations?
Well, you know, one thing, since I've been here as Secretary of Labor, a lot of people look at enforcement of wage and hour and of OSHA as not necessarily a good thing. It looks like it's anti-business, and that's not the case. I would love to get us here at the Department of Labor, at OSHA and wage and hour, where we're actually informing companies and helping them, making sure that job sites are safe. And for too long, we've been somewhat of reactionary departments where we've been called to a scene of an accident on a job site, or we've been called to a job site where an employee might not have gotten their proper wages. And I would love to be able to get to the point here where we're doing education as well, working collectively with companies, working with businesses, working with people to make sure that job sites are safe. When I was a younger person, I worked in Boston as a construction worker, and OSHA would come on the job site, and what they would do at that time, they weren't coming on in response to an accident. They were coming on doing inspections to make sure the job sites are safe. And what happens when you do that is you have safer job sites. And I think that it's important that we get back to those. So in this bill, there's more enforcement for both of those departments, as well as the investments in the jobs and training.
One of the big concerns across the country right now is inflation. And as you know, Mr. Secretary, wages are going up. Actually, prices are going up faster than wages. What would the effect of the Build Back Better plan be on inflation? A lot of people are concerned to spend even more money in the economy right now. It takes us in the wrong direction.
Yeah, you know, certainly we've all acknowledged that that inflation is real and that we're moving towards working on that. One way we're doing that in this bill is by increasing the people's ability to get into better paying jobs. The economists have said that this will help us reduce inflation as we move forward here. And certainly there's more that we have to do as well. I mean, obviously the supply chain is a big issue as well. We have to make sure that particularly on the West Coast, we have to make sure that we ease that supply chain. The president's been very focused on that in making sure that turning the ports into 24/7. And now I'm going out to Los Angeles in a couple of weeks to talk to some trucking companies and the ports about how do we continue to stay on top of that. That's very important. I think almost 60% of all products that come into the United States of America come into the port of LA. So we need to make sure that port's working properly.
Mr. Secretary, do we want wages to catch up with the prices? Because obviously we don't want real wages to go down. That hurts the worker. But on the other hand, if we really catch the wages up to prices, won't that just feed the beast of inflation?
Well, I just think, when it comes to inflation, I just think it's really important for us. I know that they're connected, but for a second here, I just want to separate them. Too many Americans in this country are not earning good wages. Too many Americans in this country don't have a chance to get to the middle class. Too many families don't have that opportunity, and I think that the president's plan of Build Back Better and what he said since he's been a candidate for president is to create a pathway into the middle class. And I think that the more people that we can create that pathway for in marginalized communities that have been left behind for so long, communities of color, women, so many people have not had a chance to get to the middle class and experience that American dream. We need to do more there, and these two bills will help us with that. And as far as inflation, we'll have the ability to be able to bring costs down. When people have the ability to be able to, if you have more supply of product and you have people earning more money, I would say that's a recipe of success.
Mr. Secretary, one of the priorities of President Biden since he came to office, and I know it's yours as well, is to really improve the lot of organized labor in particular. We're seeing perhaps some of the ramifications of that with, for example, the John Deere contract that was negotiated, which looks like it's pretty good for workers. Can you really buttress, enforce, strengthen organized labor without feeding inflation and driving up wages?
Well, I think organized labor, in some cases, has to do their work too. I mean, and the president certainly. I think I've said this more than one time. This is one of the probably the most pro-labor, pro-union administrations in the history of the country. In saying that, organized labor has a role to play as well. I mean, they have to go out there, whether it's a current contract, existing contract, or new contracts, to let people know that we can collectively work together with businesses to move businesses forward. The contracts, some of the disputes that we're seeing around the country, some of it is over wages and healthcare and pensions, but some of it's over working conditions too. So the concerns that people have in this country right now, generally, not just organized labor people, but everyone, their concern is making sure they're going into a safe work environment. We're still living in a pandemic time. And I think that some of these contracts are about work conditions, which is something we really haven't seen in quite a bit.
That was, of course, David Weston with U.S. Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh. They spoke earlier today about what the Build Back Better package passed by the White House would mean for workers.
All right, so it's gone through the House, now it has to go through the Senate, so this is going to be certainly something. We don't have really a timetable yet. We talked earlier with our Jody Schneider about some of the difficulties in kind of figuring out that as it goes back and forth through members of the Senate. So, what a day.
This was a fun day live from the UBS Arena in Long Island, just about 45 minutes from Manhattan.
Yeah, exactly. And this is going to be a top-notch arena that's competing with the likes of the Barclays Center, the Garden, also the PNC Center out in New Jersey. I mean, it's all about sports, but also entertainment.
We were a little spoiled today. We're actually in sort of like a VIP lounge right now. And Carol, the next time we come here, we're just going to be normal people. And I think that's a little concerning.
You might be normal. I don't know if I'll ever be normal. But it was fascinating to talk with Tim Leiweke and also John Ledecky. I mean, John Ledecky, of course, of the Islanders, getting ready to play their first home game after being on the road, and really excited about this arena and what it means for them as having an intimate home base, finally. And then, of course, Tim Leiweke. This is the second NHL arena that he has done and just completed, and he's got a lot more coming up.
Yeah, also some ambitious climate goals for the arena, going carbon neutral in the next couple of years. In addition to that, Carol, the idea of creating a real multi-purpose arena that works as well for the hockey team as it does for performers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's interesting. John and Tim both telling us how they went out to entertainers. What did they want? John talking about really being in touch with the fans, what kind of experience they want. And they really, from the ground up, were able to build this arena. All right, everybody. It's been quite a week. We've got a great weekend show coming up.
We do have a great weekend show. Check it out. We got Wheels Up CEO Kenny Dichter, along with Lyft Labs from NBC Universal, Comcast, Lyft Labs.
And a little bit of fun with Gina Shack of the Go-Go. So check it out at Bloomberg Radio. That's at 8 a.m. on Bloomberg Radio Businessweek, and check out our podcast feed as well. For Tim Stanovic, I'm Carol Master, and the whole Businessweek team. Have a great week and a safe weekend. This is Bloomberg.